Brad Batten is the Shadow Minister for Police and Emergency Services. And Brad is better placed than most to comment on what's been going on with the Victorian Police as a former police officer. Brad's with us today on The Informer to talk through some of the events of the last week. Morning, Brad.
Good morning, and thanks for having us on again.
We've just had an acting sergeant charged or suspended while he's being investigated over what could only be described as a brutal sling tackle. Where are we going with Victoria Police and how do we stop this?
Yeah, we've seen some incidents recently, and I've raised these with the police command as well, which we see on YouTube, we see on social media, and they spread very, very quickly. And I know we don't get the full story. However, some actions are quite indefensible, but it's really important that people who are witness to or are impacted by these, that they can have the process to go and ensure that the police investigate it, and they can have confidence the investigations are done, because it's not just the police, they're overseen by IBAC. And I think it's really important that the community is aware that any of those circumstances that we've seen recently should be investigated, and I think that's really important. Overall, I stand by police. The Victoria Police is a great organisation. The men and women in the police, I know adrenaline gets you sometimes. Hopefully your muscle memory comes into play, so you act on what you should know is adrenaline at the time.
We've seen what would appear to be the constant militarisation of the police. We've gone to the dark uniforms that aren't really inviting. We've moved away from that community policing. Is some of that playing into this? Is there a training issue here?
Yeah, I don't know if it's so much a training issue, and the change of uniforms has obviously been there for a while. However, I think a change in policy direction from government, because at the end of the day, Victoria Police, like all other government departments, are required to deliver on policy of government. So the only way to change back to a genuine community policing model, or to ensure that we have a better interaction between police and the community, is actually to change government, because you need to have direction from government where you're focusing on how do we make the Victoria Police more part of the community. And I think that's something that we've lost over time. And at this time, there's division in the community in so many areas, and this is an area that's just not helping. And I think police command need to speak up on that and really talk about the fact that they want to be independent when they're making these decisions. They don't like delivering on the current health orders that are coming in from the government. And I'm not saying directly for management, but I know that the troops on the ground, it's something that is really confronting for them, because it's not why they signed up. They didn't sign up to give someone a fine for not wearing a mask. That's where the division starts. And I think it needs to stop by the government changing the tact and the policy, and then directing that through management.
We're fairly laying the blame at the Andrews government for a mismanagement of police resources and intentions, aren't we?
Yeah, look, it's pretty easy to blame them, because they've obviously got to take responsibility for something eventually. But I think at this stage, what they have done is they've managed to push it across to say it is all Victoria Police. Now, in saying that, the Victoria Police operational side, the management have to take some responsibility for some of the things that are happening on the ground. So, and Shane Patton, as the Chief Commissioner, I know would take that on board, that he is responsible for the actions of a lot of things that happen. But he has to deliver on the policy that is there and set by the government. And at the end of the day, if you want to see a change through the Victoria Police Force, then it has to be done by changing the government. And I think that's paramount to what needs to happen in the future. Or you're going to continue where the government, and I hate to say it, but they kind of use the Victoria Police as a pawn in the game, and they treat this as a game when they keep locking Victorians down. It's just a disgrace. We've got people locked up continuously, and we've got 1,500 police roughly who are out there at the moment, just up on the borders or patrolling people going in and out of regional versus metropolitan Melbourne. At the same time, crime stats come out today, a nearly 10% increase in family violence. We need to get police focusing where it needs to be, and that's protecting the community, getting the genuine offenders, those are domestic violent offenders at home, and ensuring that people are safe in their houses.
Now, Lisa Neville's silence has been deafening on this issue. She's not doing much to assuage community concerns or the force's concerns as well, is she?
Yeah, Lisa likes to sit on the fence with these. I'm amazed she hasn't got splinters, because when you're sitting on the fence, eventually no one likes you, and I think that's a real problem. But she's got to come out very forcefully and say that she backs, number one, Victoria Police troops on the ground, and that they understand and they will push that any investigation that goes through will be seen properly and independently. So if there's a bad police officer out there doing bad things, they should be charged as per what the regulations say. But also she has the opportunity to come out and say, Victoria Police of the future will be a community policing model We want to make sure we get back to the levels of trust and respect for Victoria Police as soon as possible. And we can't continue to use them on the front line of the Chief Health Officer's orders. And we've seen today, as I said, 32,000 Chief Health Officer orders breaches over the past 3 months, or up until September. So it's not even including what's happening now. Sorry, I rephrase that, up until June. It's not actually what's including from July till now. So it's going to increase drastically again. And these fines, people are confused. They don't know. And I can ask you now, what rules you can and can't apply on? And we've seen today, golf's available, but you're not allowed to use a toilet. You can go fishing as long as you're not more than 15 kilometres from home. Like, it's all these rules that keep changing. How can these stand up in court? You know what we're going to see now? We're going to see police in court trying to make sure these charges stick, because that's their requirement. And that is going to be more police off the street. That is going to be courts tied up with the fact they're going to be worrying about fines that people are challenging. And that means people, like we've just seen recently, where you see serious offences and they can't get into court until March next year. And justice delayed is justice denied. So we need to make sure that we fix the system. We need to make sure police are community policing, and we need to make sure that the people who have those fines, let's not have them all through court. Let's get on with running the economy and getting Victoria back to what it should be and get Victoria back on track.
How do we stop Victoria Police being accused of or being seen as becoming politicised through Andrew's management?
Yeah, that's a really difficult task. First of all, as I said, I'll go back to you have to change government. But we've seen the Andrews Labor government in the past, and Labor governments prior to that, where they stand and they put their epaulets on the new Chief Commissioner and they interfere in operational decisions. And I think that's what's got to stop first. So if you want to depoliticise it, during the 4 years we were in, at least we tried to stay away and give the police the power to be operational, and we just give them the policy direction. That's what should be happening. I think there's too much interference from government in directing what they should do. And a key point is, if you want to depoliticise it, we have to move away from these Chief Health Officers' orders to try and work our way to get back to open, more freedoms, and then the police can get back to what they're doing. People don't mind when police are, arresting someone for an armed robbery or a house invasion or a burglary. What they do get frustrated with is when they're interfering with some of the protests that are in Melbourne, and we've seen some of the protests that have been violent, and police should be involved then. But we see the ones also that are peaceful protests, and we have to turn around and go, that's what our democracy is based on. We saw Black Lives Matter. We saw the Victoria Police say it was a human right to allow people to protest after the minister came out and said that was the position of the government. But when it was protests against the government, all of a sudden the police have come out and said, no, we can't have these protests due to Chief Health Officer's orders. The same orders were in place at the same time. We need to make sure that it's consistent, and then people can have faith that they're not politicised.
Andrew's penchant for micromanaging and controlling everything, even his ministers, seem to be muzzled and controlled like a finely orchestrated press conference. That seems to be a continuation of what we're seeing with the police, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And look, Andrews is obviously Daniel Andrews is a very different leader to we've had in the past. And we can see it within his own team. He's got no desire to deliver or listen to the community. He'll do as he sees, when he sees, and what he pleases. And what we've seen is he'll throw anyone under the bus at any time to ensure he can get away with what he wants to do. And I think Victorians are starting to see that. We've seen today, obviously, yesterday, with the announcement of charges of the health department. And let's be honest, that's just a farce. We're going to have one government department fighting another government department where your taxpayers' money is going to go, and all it is in the end is going to cost Victorians for lawyers. And we're going to see no one in the top charged or in trouble for it along the way. We've got a government that doesn't take responsibility. That includes in his own cabinet. He will push people out who don't agree with him. And it's not new. He did this to Jane Garrett when Jane Garrett spoke up to say that they shouldn't have the FRV legislation with Fire Rescue Victoria. He got rid of her from his own cabinet because she spoke up. And that seems to be the path along the way. Anyone that speaks against him, get rid of him.
We saw poor old Jenny McCarkis thrown under the bus as well. How long before Lisa Neville's in that position as well?
That's right. Yeah, and we've actually seen other department heads as well. So when department heads speak up, they end up going. So no wonder you have many government department heads, and one of those is Shane Patton as a Chief Commissioner, because the government won't allow them to speak any way other than the government line, or they effectively just dismiss them. And we've seen it in emergency services. I couldn't even give you a number off the top of my head, the amount of chiefs, commissioners, etc., that spoke up against government, even in minor ways, that have been given the sack. They actually run the game of fear. Do as we say, or we'll dismiss you. And it's the same way they operate with all of the community now. And it's a very scary thought. They're out there saying now to all Victorians, do as we say or we'll fine you. And then you'll eventually learn to comply. There's no carrot and stick, it's all stick. We need to see some carrot here in Victoria like they do in New South Wales, or you're going to end up with more and more issues with people fighting against it.
And as you previously stated, 32,000 infringement notices. A few months down the track, all of those police in court having to present evidence for that, and I pretty much can guarantee that suddenly it'll be, well, the police are overstretched and underfunded and the members are working their backsides off trying to overcome the shortcuts, and they're stretched even further, and suddenly Andrews won't put his hand up, will he?
Yeah, and that's right. And this is what I mean. You've got to get to a stage there and look at those fines and what is going to be the impact on community safety if we fight all of those through court. And I've said it quite publicly today. I think if Daniel Andrews is adamant that he wants to chase every single fine that was issued here in Victoria to try and get his return on them, then that means he's not concentrating on what he should do. And that's been getting Victoria back on track, reopening, making sure schools are back, getting businesses back. Our entertainment industry has been absolutely destroyed. He needs to be getting behind the entertainment industry and making sure we're getting that back here in Victoria. Because I'll tell you, while we've got a health crisis now, we'll have an economic and jobs crisis coming up. If Daniel Andrews wants to focus on one thing, then getting fines from everyday Victorians, rather than focusing on what he should be of getting Victoria back to the state, which we all know was the best place in the world to live, and we've slowly but surely lost that category.
All right, Brad Batten, Shadow Minister for Police and Emergency Services, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.